Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm swapping out my queen for a nuke, which moves like a queen and a knight for any distance in any direction, and seeing if that's enough to beat the world's strongest engine, Stockfish. Let's get started with game number 1. Alright, game number 1, as you can see, I do have a nuke on the board, and from the get-go, since it can move like a knight for any distance, it can actually jump straight to f5. Now, that's not enough to deliver checkmate, because that wouldn't put us at a knight's distance away from the king. Not to mention that even if we were a knight's distance away from the king, it is possible to block the movement of the nuke. So while it is a strong piece, I don't think that it throws normal chess principles completely out the window. We are met with pawn to d6, and I'm kind of curious to see if we're going to be met with anything drastically different than normal chess, because this is basically just a queen on steroids. So I will continue with my normal opening. The real question is whether or not this advantage of the fact that my nuke can move like a knight for any distance, in addition to the queen's movement, will be enough for me to overpower Stockfish. We are met with knight to f6, and to be honest, so far this is pretty standard. This is all quote-unquote theory, if you just ignore this rather suspicious piece on d1. We are met with knight to d7. We're very clearly just going to get a normal King's Indian, as far as I can tell, so I'm going to play into what is just theory. We do in fact get pawn to g6. Now when I play against the King's Indian, usually I shift my attention a little bit more towards the queen side, so instead of my usual London setup of pawn to c3, which creates a very strong pawn chain to support e5, I instead push pawn to c4, because e5 is very obviously not available to my knight anymore. So I'll play c4 in this position, and we are met with pawn to c5. It's quite funny that you can tell this is very blatantly an engine sort of move, because as a human, I would lose my mind if I started attacking in the center before my king was castled, when you have a piece as aggressive as the nuke on the board. Because you'd imagine there would be, I don't know, some species of like capture, sack the bishop, and somehow the nuke gets there and checkmates the king. Now, none of that actually works. If you capture, the knight just takes back, and even if they do take back with the pawn, d6 is defended twice. But still, broadly speaking, this idea of breaking open the center while your king is still in the middle of the board when there is this weird little piece present is quite baffling. But okay, we'll continue with knight to c3. We are met with knight to h5, and if there is one thing that Stockfish or chess engines in general are usually quite good at doing, is restricting the mobility of your pieces. Now, because this nuke is so hypermobile, being able to move like a queen and a knight for any distance, I'm very curious to see how or even if Stockfish is able to tame this piece. But in the meantime, we get knight to h5 targeting the bishop. I'm simply going to move it out of the way. If we ever get met with something like h6, there's bishop to h4. If we get pawn forward, I can drop the knight back. I'm looking at the knight on h5. Should they take, they would double their pawns, and I would get a piece back. We are in fact met with h6. I will simply slide back. g5 would be quite surprising to see, unless the idea is like, I don't know, knight d2 and like knight to f4 takes. That would be quite amusing. Okay, no, we are in fact met with bishop to g7. The only reason I'm familiar with this line is because it is opening prep for me in some variations of this opening to just drop the knight back to d2, and it usually catches the opponents off guard when I play knight to d2 almost instantaneously. But we get bishop g7 instead, so that is not going to happen. I think I'm just going to go ahead and close up the center. Because if there's ever a universe where Stockfish castles before I castle, then I'm just going to develop my bishop, eventually develop my nuke, and probably castle the opposite way. And all of that is going to help me feed into this kingside attack, and if I am going to do a kingside attack, I'd probably rather have the center closed. Whoa! Okay, we get king to f8. Wait, do I not have castling enabled? Why on earth king to f8? I'm so confused. Wait. Okay, I'm going to play bishop d3, and on the next turn I have to check if even I can castle. But I recommend checking out the sponsor of this video, chessreps.com, which offers easy step-by-step opening lessons. Drill your opening to climb to the top of the leaderboard, or do puzzles that come from real games. Like this puzzle where I can click back to see how we got to this Jobava London position, before delivering this nasty fork. Puzzles are completely free, so you can keep doing puzzles to increase your opening elo, and then take that practice into a real game, like I did to crush my opponent with the Jobava London. If you want to support the channel and become an opening menace, check out chessreps.com. Now, back to the video. Okay, we get knight to f6. Oh, I can't castle! No! Okay, so we don't have castling enabled. Is that really the end of the world? Not really. But it is quite amusing that I forgot to make sure that we can both castle. Anyways, I do see this as an advantage for me, I think, because now I can create this battery with my nuke and the bishop targeting g6, and I'd definitely be crazy enough to sack my bishop for 2 pawns against Stockfish if it means that my nuke can get that up and close to the enemy king. So I think I'm going to play exactly that. We're going to play nuke to, okay, nuke to c2 is apparently also check. I've just realized you can see this knight movement repeated 3 times down the board does actually put the king in check, so I'd imagine it's going to shuffle it over to g8. If it moves back to the center, I'll be blown away, because surely bishop g6 is just winning at that point. Right, we do get king to g8. As much as I would have loved to have played this, I don't think it's fitting anymore because there's no follow-up once the nuke gets in there by itself. Even though it is a very strong piece, I don't think it can actually mate the king by itself when there are 3 pieces standing in its way. So, how to continue this attack? I don't think I want to just trade off pieces because it would help them develop their light-squared bishop, but I do need to create some sort of action here on the king side of the board. Actually, wait. Stockfish is kind of getting ahead of me. Do it with this sort of pseudo castle. I mean, I wouldn't even be totally blown away if it played king to h7 and slid the rook over. So maybe I should follow suit. I'm going to play rook to d1, which looks like I'm just bringing the rook to the center of the board, but what I'm actually planning to do is to slide the king up to d2 and then back to c1. And I guess we both actually solved the problem of castling in the end anyways. Oh, pawn to g5. Okay, never in my wildest dreams would I play pawn to g5 in this position. I'm sure Stockfish has its reasoning for it. But in my head, that sort of just creates a nice easy target. So I can play like bishop to g3, which I'll go ahead and put on the board now. And then maybe look for ideas like h4. I don't know, try to open up a file. Lots of nice coordinations here on h7. I'd imagine if I played h4, it would try for g4. Oh, and maybe what it just wants to do is just close up the position altogether. Okay, so I do have to be careful of that. Okay, we get knight to h5 again. I really have no idea what it's after. I'm not even sure that it knows what it's after. I'm going to play king to d2, get this pseudo castle out of the way, just so that my king isn't in the center of the board, and it'll make it much less of a headache for me to try and open up the king side if I don't have to worry about my king sitting around in the middle. Okay, we get bishop to f6. We'll just slide the king back to c1. Queen to a5. Interesting. So there's a little bit of pressure on a2, but I don't think that's the main idea. I think, it's just now dawning on me that I should have been aware of this from the get-go, that what it's looking to do is take the knight, and I can't actually take back with the nuke. I mean, I could, right, if I'm going to use it as if it were a queen, because the queen takes back, pawn takes back, and then basically I've traded off my nuke for a queen. And that does not sound particularly fair to me. With how strong the nuke is. So I guess in a sense, my knight is actually in danger. You can think of this almost like a rook attacking my knight and this like a queen defending the knight. You wouldn't want to trade off a rook for a queen. In the same way, you wouldn't want to trade off this queen for my nuke. So maybe I need to like move the knight back, but then we have queen takes a2, right? And then looking at b2 is also a problem. I mean, in that scenario, I would get a queen and a bishop for a nuke and a pawn. And what's that? A piece for a pawn against Stockfish? That's probably, that might be winnable once the queens are off the board or once the queen and the nuke are off the board. And I'm not really sure I have many other options. I mean, what if I played knight to e4? Then if queen takes, check, knight takes, and I'd have to play my king back to d2 because in no universe would I want this check to have to walk into the queen's line of sight with my nuke. Unless I just drop my knight back. Oh, that could work. Okay, I like that. We'll play knight to e4. Idea is queen takes a2. I do drop a pawn, unfortunately, but I'll probably just take on f6, removing the attacker of b2, or at least one of the attackers of b2. One of these 2 knights will take back, and then I'll play knight to d2. If check, knight to b1. Hyper defensive, loses me a pawn, but keeps my nuke on the board. Okay, we are met with bishop to g7, which means I think I can just play a3 now, right? And just get all of those problems off my back. By just not allowing the queen into the back rank. Okay, we get knight to f6. I've talked about this on the channel before, but I feel like it's worth mentioning now as well. I wrote a paper for an English class in college one time about the difference between how engines and people play chess. And one of the biggest differences is the ability of the engine to change their entire plan at a moment's notice. And one of the key symptoms of this ability is, you get one movement on the king side, then another movement on the queen side looking for a totally different idea, then another movement back on the king side looking for yet another idea. And this sort of versatility in its entire plan changing move to move is not only impressive, but also one of the most frustrating things you have to deal with when you play against an engine. And I don't know, I think just this back and forth sort of movement reminded me of that. So we do get knight to f6. You'd imagine I want to trade off pieces, because in some sense I do have an advantage, a material advantage that is by having a nuke over a queen. So I think I just want to trade pieces. Okay, ooh, interesting. We get bishop takes back, and I think I'm going to play e4 here. Idea being, of course, e5, and then maybe we can get some more trades on the board. Okay, we get queen back, okay, and it's looking to take. I lose my nuke, or at least I imagine this is what it's trying to do. I would lose my nuke, and it would lose a bishop for a pawn. So again, at the end of that, I would have a piece for a pawn, which against Stockfish might not be the biggest thing in the world, but objectively should be quite a bit better for me. The other option I have is e5 right away. Knight takes, pawn takes, and then I just block that pawn in, so the bishop never has scope to b2 ever again, which I like the sound of much better. So we'll play e5, keep that nuke on the board at all costs. Okay, so we do get pawn takes. Oh, I wonder why I didn't take here first. Well, not my problem. I'm going to take on e5 and keep trading off pieces. And I really like this trade because my bishop was pointing at basically air, wasn't really doing anything. And black's bishop was looking at b2, which is quite a critical square, both in terms of my king's safety and in terms of getting rid of this nuke. So I'm very happy about this trade of bishops. Okay, we get g4, way out of left field. Obviously, if I move the knight, I simply lose the piece, so I kind of have to take here without even too much calculation. Okay, we get queen takes back. Now, I do have to move the knight. It seems the only safe square, well, I suppose there are 3 safe squares, but 2 of them interrupt the rook's connection, so knight to d2 is probably the only one that makes any sense, even though it does allow the queen to take. I don't know. It seems like I have really good compensation in the form of a counterattack on the king side, should black actually take me up on this free pawn. Okay, instead we get knight to f4, hits the bishop, hits the pawn on g2. I kind of just want to play knight to e4 here. Counterattack the queen on f6. Should it take with check, I just take back, and I'm still looking at that queen. Right, we get queen over, and I think, oh man, I was going to say, I think f3 here looks really good. I think black is also looking for bishop to f5. Because again, if there were a series of trades here to happen that eventually ended up in me giving up my nuke for the queen, it would actually be advantageous for black. So I really want to avoid that if at all possible. Maybe I need to be getting more active. Maybe I need to play like nuke to a4 or something. Try to get it on e8. That would almost be checkmate. But I don't know. I don't want to lose the integrity of the position willy-nilly for no reason. So I'm going to start with f3 instead. Right, we get knight takes. Of course, I have to take back with the nuke. I would love to see Stockfish take. I take back. Queen g2 and then rook g1, that would be spectacular. Of course, no such luck, we'll get bishop to f5 instead, putting more pressure on the knight. If I take this pawn, the knight disappears, forks the nuke and the pawn on g2. So I'd imagine I should reinforce the knight, and then maybe I have threats of like taking on c5. Okay, I like that. Maybe I'll do it with this rook actually. Okay, we get pawn to b5. Now, taking here is a legal move. It's a little bit sketchy because there are ideas of like rook to c8 supported by the bishop, which look at the nuke, and then the pawn on c4 in turn, which b5 does a really good job of supporting. So if I move the nuke out of the way at that point, rook takes c4, and my position is probably in shambles at that point. Now, what happens if I just take? Pawn to c4, I can't take because of rook to c8 pins the nuke to the king. So should pawn to c4 get played, I'd have to shuffle out of the way. And that actually looks kind of fine to me. I think I'm just going to take that pawn. Right, if I get enough material advantage in black's sort of desperate attempt to break into my king side, then I will actively look for a way to trade the nuke for the queen and just run with whatever material advantage I have left over. Okay, we get rook to d8 instead, targeting d5, maybe ideas of e6 to put more pressure on that pinned pawn. And I'm thinking I just move the nuke out of the way. Go ahead and shuffle to c3, give it some new scope. Oh, okay. Queen to g7 offers a trade. I really don't think I have enough advantage yet, however. Well, maybe if I take king takes, knight takes. It's a knight versus bishop endgame where the position is mostly open and there's a bishop for the black pieces, but how much advantage would I have in terms of material? Like a 2-pawn advantage? Can I beat Stockfish in a 2-pawn advantage? Endgame. I don't think I'm that cocky. I think I'm just going to go ahead and slide up to c4. Okay, we get king to h7, connecting the rooks and probably looking to shuffle them over at some point to have a pretty dynamic attack against my king. So I should probably start simplifying here and trying to open up the king side, or rather the side where black's king is on, before it gets a chance to rearrange its pieces. So let's take on g4. We do get bishop takes back, targets the rook. How's about a simple rook lift here? I mean, it would open up d4 for a trade, but as long as I do it with tempo and I'm actually eyeballing something, it should be fine. So we'll go rook d3 here. Rook to g8 is, oh, I was going to say highly amusing, but it makes a lot of sense. Actually, builds off what I just mentioned. If I play rook g3 now, there's queen d4, takes, and there is no free piece because you do have that rook defending the bishop. So, can't move this guy over quite yet, again, because of queen d4, but I can play h3 and boot the bishop. Maybe follow up with g4, g5, and that looks really interesting. Okay, bishop to h5, I mean, of course g4, force it back even further, and not to mention, the bishop then cuts off this entire battery from defending g5, so I can play g5 myself, even with only one defending piece. Right, we do get bishop to g6, I mean, surely this is the right move. Unless it's just going to play h5 and close off the entire king side. Okay, in that case, maybe h4, because if I play h5 myself, then I trap the bishop. So it would have to take, I could take back, queen would probably block, I would just take on e7. If the rook comes in, I take here with check, I trade off, and I'm pretty sure I can win that endgame even against Stockfish. So let's give this a try. We'll start with h4. Okay, that makes sense. King to h8. If I play h5, the bishop has an escape square now on h7. And I suppose if I play g5, we will just get met with h5. On the bright side, Stockfish is very clearly now playing purely defensive chess. The downside is that now I have to play precisely enough to actually break through its defense, which is not going to be easy. Maybe I'll start with g5. I think I'm more interested in having this pressure on top of the enemy's position, even if it gets closed off, than I am in having a backwards pawn on g4 if everything does get traded off. Right, we are met with h5, which is okay. The other thing I'm wondering is if there might be any tactics with like d6. Right, pawn takes, rook takes, bishop takes, nuke takes, rook takes, nuke takes back. That looks pretty interesting, and it might simplify us into an endgame that I might be winning. Because I do kind of have to untangle this situation. I have this threat of the knight being pinned to the rook, and I have the looming threat of queen d4 if I ever move the rook out of the way. Oh, I could also move the nuke back and have the threat of nuke d4, f5, h6 if the queen ever moves out of the way, which I really like the look of, so we'll play that first. We'll play nuke back to b3. Oh no, pawn to c4! Wait, pawn to c4, if I take with the nuke, we have rook c8, which pins the nuke to the king. Oh, but I can't ignore that, I have to take and then just block with the knight, I guess? Bishop takes, nuke takes, still defends the knight somehow? Right, we do get rook to c8, I have no choice but to play knight to c5. Wow, that fell to shambles very quickly, but great find, of course, by the strongest engine in the world. Oh, it doesn't even take on d3, it thinks it's more important to double up the rooks against the knight. But there's no way I'm going to let it win the knight outright. Surely I can just play like rook to c3, and then if we do get the doubled rooks, I'll just play b4. Worst comes to worst, I'll just cram the king in a corner and hope that the stack of pieces is enough to defend. Right, we do get the doubling of the rooks. Of course, I'm going to follow that up with b4. And we get king to h7, which stinks to me of buying time / just waiting around. Stockfish will do that too. It will try and optimize its position, and if it thinks there is no way for it to make forward progress, it will just make a move that holds neutral, which is definitely one of the more human things that it does. Now the question is, how do I think I can break through? Maybe I'll just slide the nuke back and eventually just trade off the nuke for the queen, because this is getting pretty close to the point where I think I can just like push these pawns and have enough of a sort of weight on Stockfish's position that I might just be able to win this. So I'll move the nuke back to e3 for right now. Okay, rook to d8 shuffles over to target d5. If I do take the queen right now, which I can by having two knight movements, the king does take back. Knight to e6 check. Pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes. Rook takes e7. I would be up the exchange and 3 pawns. I mean, there's no way I can't win that, surely. If I can't win that, I will be very disappointed in myself. Because at that point, it's not a matter of finessing Stockfish, it's just converting the position. Of course, we get king back, we'll play knight to e6 check. Pawn takes, of course we'll take the free rook. Rook does in fact take on d5, we will take on e7. I'm just realizing I'm hanging b5, but I'll take e6 in the process, so maybe it's fine. Oh, and then I'd be threatening the bishop anyways, so maybe I don't lose b5. Right, we get king to g8, take on e6, target the bishop. Bishop down to d3. Okay, maybe b5 is toast unless I want to play a4, which allows rook to d4, which hits 3 different pawns all in the same rank. And I really don't have much interest in doing that. I think I'd rather just lose b5. Let's go rook to e7. If bishop takes, maybe just rook back to e5 and force a trade of a rook. Otherwise, I grab a7, I threaten back rank mate, pass pawns, and all sorts of fun stuff for me. Okay, we do get bishop takes b5. I'll move back and force a trade of pieces. Notice that all of my pawns are on dark squares, so there's no way this bishop can ever target them. So now after we trade these rooks, it should be pretty much game over. Nice, we'll go ahead and take. And this is just a matter of simple conversion. The bishop goes back to defend the pawn, but I can simply boot the bishop with the rook. Bishop moves out of the way, 2 passed pawns, should be pretty straightforward. We'll keep the rook on the back rank to make sure the king never crosses over, and the bishop alone can definitely not stop 2 pawns with the support of the king. Alright, we promote to a queen. Absolutely spectacular. Bishop, okay, now it's just hanging whatever. Wait, or is that a stalemate attempt? No, it's not. Sweet, because king d4 is always possible, king e3, king d3, plenty of moves, we get king d3, and of course, I have to finish this off with my favorite type of checkmate. We will walk the king down from whence he came. Check. You can see it's moving instantaneously now because it knows that it's forced. Invented by John Ladder in 400 BC. We do get Ladder's mate. With that, we do defeat Stockfish by swapping out the queen for a nuke. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know if I should try swapping out any other pieces or maybe giving Stockfish some of the nukes. Also, I asked last time if you guys liked the purple board. A lot of you guys did like it, but a lot of you guys also just preferred the simpler colors. And I think even for myself, the purple board is a bit much. So I am going to keep it to the more neutral blue. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.